A former Minnesota police officer faces manslaughter charges days after she fatally shot a black man during a traffic stop. That death has ignited protests across the country. At the same time, the Derek Chauvin trial continues. Camilla Burnell is live with the latest.
One defense witness today, a forensic pathologist who told the jury that he believes George Floyd died of a sudden heart problem. He says in his opinion, his death should have been undetermined and not a homicide, and then added that there are some contributing factors in his opinion. The drugs, the heart disease, and even brought up the possibility of carbon monoxide poisoning, but he did try to stay away from the knee on the neck.
Bottom line is he has an enlarged heart.
Maryland's former chief medical examiner testifying as an expert witness as the defense attempts to establish an alternative theory of George Floyd's death.
How did the heart and drugs contribute to the cause of death?
They were significant.
Dr. David Fowler telling the jury Floyd's drug use, prior health conditions, and potential exposure to carbon monoxide from the exhaust pipe of a police vehicle
contributed to Mr. Floyd having a sudden cardiac arrest.
The prosecution disagrees, blaming Floyd's death on Derek Chauvin's actions.
The defendant's conduct was a causal factor in bringing about Mr. Floyd's death.
And on the second day of the defense's presentation, attorney Eric Nelson looking to bring a quick end to the trial.
For a judgment of acquittal in this particular case, the state has essentially introduced doubt in the context of providing multiple opinions from multiple experts, all of which seem to contradict each other.
Taken as a whole, the state believes that it's established and will establish beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty of all charges.
I'm going to deny the defense motion for judgment of acquittal.
The defense is expected to rest its case as soon as the end of the week. Now back to this witness. Very interesting cross-examination. The prosecution trying to suggest that he hadn't done his homework, that he was cherry-picking, that in fact he did not even know for a fact if that car was on. He did admit that there is no evidence, no data to show that George Floyd died of carbon monoxide poisoning, but then answered a little bit more than he needed to in cross-examination, saying there were no tests, this was not sent to the lab to either prove or disprove this. Reporting live in Minneapolis, I'm Camilla Burnell. Back to you.
Thanks for that report. Hey, we're still waiting for those latest coronavirus numbers from the State Department of Health. As soon as we get them, we'll pass them along to you.
That's right. Meanwhile, the CDC director today explained in detail why the federal government is putting a pause on the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
The decision to pause administration of Johnson & Johnson vaccine was made specifically for 3 reasons. First, we want to alert the healthcare providers to be on the lookout for these rare events post-vaccination and to make sure that they are treating patients appropriately. It is imperative for healthcare workers to know that the treatment of these clots is different than our current standard of care. While we would typically treat blood clots with a medication called heparin and its derivatives should definitively be avoided in the treatment of these clots while an investigation of the cause is ongoing. Second, there may be additional cases to report. We want people who have received a vaccine and their healthcare providers to be aware of these events and report them to the CDC and FDA through the VAERS system. And third, the pause will allow our independent committee of scientific experts to review the safety information on this vaccine and these events to determine their significance.
Governor Ige expects Hawaii's public schools to fully reopen this upcoming school year. He told the Hawaii Tribune-Herald that he doesn't see why that wouldn't happen. The governor points to possible vaccinations among teens in the upcoming months. Outgoing school superintendent Christina Kishimoto also said the fall semester was the target for full in-person learning. Most Hawaii campuses are currently doing a blended or hybrid learning model of both in-person and distance learning.
So it turns out having that middle seat empty on airplanes offered some protection against COVID-19. According to a new study by the CDC, researchers found that the risk of COVID-19 exposure was reduced by 23 to 57% when the middle seats were empty on planes. Scientists said it's important to recognize their study addresses only exposure and not transmission. Researchers say more tests are needed to determine the risk of the virus possibly being transmitted and causing illness on planes. The the analysis did not measure the impact of wearing masks, which is currently required on flights. Have you ever wondered how airlines make money off of those frequent flyer programs? And I'm talking about a lot of money. Here's Peter Greenberg of CBS News to explain.
Before the pandemic, the airlines were making more money from their frequent flyer programs than they were making as operating airlines. That's right. How did they do that? Let's do the math. The airlines were selling miles to financial institutions. Delta was selling it to American Express, American to Citibank, United to Chase, at about 1.3 or 1.4 cents a mile, which means that, and of course they were using those miles as an incentive for you to use their credit cards to earn miles on everything you buy, right? Okay. Good luck redeeming them. But even before we get to the redemption factor, let's talk about how much money the airlines were making. Chase, Citibank, and American Express were writing checks to the airlines every year for billions of dollars. Now, why were they doing that? Because they all know we are mileage junkies. And then comes the redemption factor. What do you think the redemption levels are for those frequent flyer programs, which will give you an idea of why the airlines make so much money? They're getting such a rate of return on their money, mafia loan sharks can't compete. It's about 8 to 9%. That's it. So how many unredeemed frequent flyer miles are there out there right now? Miles that have been earned but not redeemed? About 23 trillion. So the airlines know that when they sell these miles to the credit card companies, and the credit card companies know it too, they're doing so with reasonable assurance that only 8% of them are ever going to be redeemed. What a rate of return. It's unbelievable. So why are they saving the airlines now? Because American went out and valued, remember, this is the airline that's losing $27 million a day. They went out and valued their frequent flyer program at $30 billion. And they just raised, based on that valuation, $10 billion in additional capital to keep them going by mortgaging their frequent flyer program for that amount of money. And Delta's going to do the same, and United will ultimately do the same. Isn't that ironic?
New at noon, I wanted to show you these new images into our newsroom from HPD. 8 gambling machines and cash were seized from an illegal game room in Waikiki overnight. A 32-year-old woman was arrested in connection to this for promotion and possession of gambling devices. That's really all the details we have right now. If we do get any more information, we'll be sure to pass it along.
President Joe Biden says he will withdraw the remaining U.S. troops from Afghanistan and end America's longest war by September 11th. He declared today that the 9/11 attacks, which were coordinated from Afghanistan, cannot justify American forces still being there 20 years after the deadliest terror assault on the United States. Here's more of what he had to say.
We already have service members doing their duty in Afghanistan today whose parents served in the same war. We have service members who were not yet born when our nation was attacked in 9/11. War in Afghanistan was never meant to be a multi-generational undertaking. We were attacked. We went to war with clear goals. We achieved those objectives. Bin Laden is dead, and Al-Qaeda is degraded in Iraq. In Afghanistan. And it's time to end the forever war. Thank you all for listening. May God protect our troops. May God bless all those families who lost someone in this endeavor.
Since the day medical cannabis was legalized, the program has centered around a patient's rights to grow their own plants. But now the state wants to create new rules that some say will block access to medication. Investigative reporter Allison Blair has the story.
It said, where flowers bloom, so does hope.
It's a feeling of healing, that I'm going to get better.
A typical garden, it is not. But it's the place this 78-year-old comes to bury her troubles, working in the soil. Breast cancer could have claimed Nan's life in 2019.
Some of the medications and some of the things that you do don't make a damn difference at all.
But soon after her diagnosis, she believes she found something that did, an oil made from medical cannabis.
And this is really where your medicine is.
In another greenhouse just a few steps away, Kevin is busy pruning plants.
I'm out here usually at least 2, if not 3 days a week.
The registered caregiver is on a mission to save his father's life.
Initial diagnosis was stage 4 lung cancer.
In addition to radiation, chemo, and immunotherapies, he took an oil produced by plants on the farm.
My dad, through the entire year of cancer treatment, slept literally every night, 8 to 10 hours a night, and ate every day. And most stage 4 cancer patients don't get that type of rest.
Both Kevin and Nan are members of a medical cannabis cooperative on Oahu's North Shore. The community grow site has been around since 2014 and serves more than 600 patients, assisting with cultivation at what users say is a safe, secure environment to exercise their grow rights.
They're all labeled, so they have the numbers, stock number, patient number.
The growers here say they spend a fraction of what they'd be charged at the dispensary and are able to customize their crop to produce strains and products local cannabis shops don't carry.
There's a few things here that I can get that I cannot get there. My dad's cancer medicine. This specific product, they don't make it.
Now the State Department of Health is pushing lawmakers to make this cooperative and others like it illegal by for the first time creating rules that would restrict the number of cannabis cardholders allowed to share the same property. If the law goes into effect, it would limit the number of patients who could grow at a single site to 5 for a total of 50 plants, less than a quarter of what's currently in this greenhouse. That means 99% of growers here would have to go elsewhere. For many, it would mean losing access to their medication.
I have nowhere to go. I live in a condominium. It is not possible for me to do this.
I did go to the dispensary, and it's really expensive. And you have to go all the way to town anyway.
Of Hawaii's 31,000 medical cannabis cardholders, the state says only 36% purchased from a dispensary last year, many opting to grow their own instead. Among those patients, there are close to 3,800 registered to cooperative grow sites. We asked the Department of Health multiple times for an interview for this story, but the agency refused. Instead, they sent us an email that said, as the registry grows, the department is concerned about large, uncontrolled cultivation sites operating under the guise of patient home growers, adding they've seen sites with up to 4,000 plants, more than what's initially allowed at a licensed dispensary. The agency also claims it's gotten a variety of complaints, everything from patients who reportedly felt coerced by collectives into signing over their growing rights to things like unpermitted indoor lighting and problems with the smell. We asked the state why not conduct inspections. Their response, it's not practical. Recently, the supervisor of Hawaii's Office of Medical Cannabis Control told lawmakers the department doesn't have adequate staff to regulate the licensed dispensaries, much less take on any new responsibilities.
Right now, the program consists of 3 people, me and 2 surveyors.
And I get frustrated when I hear what the government says I have to do. Buy where they tell me. I want to buy where I tell me.
Back at the co-op, patients are curious about the state's motive to suddenly stop a practice that's been allowed more than 2 decades, wondering if it's trying to drive business to the dispensaries or if leaders are simply incompetent.
I don't think they understand. I don't think they really understand.
With the closure of the co-op looming, some believe patient survival is hanging in the balance.
I can't get it. There is no alternative. Without this, my dad might not be alive right now.
On Oahu's North Shore, Allison Blair, Hawaii News Now.
Today, officials are dealing with the removal of a whale carcass at Sherwoods. Casey Lund was there and filed this report.
Now, good afternoon. Now, the plan for today is that the agencies involved here, both the state and federal agencies, as well as UH's stranding response team, are working to recover this carcass and take it to a burial site nearby. We've also talked to Native Hawaiian groups about how important it is, the kuleana they feel, to really take care of this animal and respect it. Earlier, we spoke to Kalani Kalima of Nakua Aina Owaimanalo about what they want to do and how grateful they are that all these agencies are working together to do the right thing.
You know, the best part about this is that everybody is trying to figure out, okay, what can we do? All of these different agencies is stepping up and saying, how can we help? And that's a beautiful thing about this. And, you know, it's bringing everybody together to work together.
And again, a public safety reminder, not just because of the shark hazards here, the bacteria along the water here in the beach, is really strong, dangerous. Of course, if you go swimming, I talked to one of the scientists out here. He says that oil, it's going to stay on your clothes and on your body for a long time. So several reasons to really stay out of the water here at Waimanalo Bay Beach until we get the okay from Ocean Safety. Reporting at Waimanalo Bay, I'm Casey Lund. Now back to you.
Thank you, Case. We have those coronavirus numbers now from the State Department of Health. The state is reporting 72 new cases today and 2 more fatalities. The breakdown by island shows 16 cases on the Big Island, 17 on Maui, 35 on Oahu, and 4 residents were diagnosed out of state. Now for a check on the weather forecast, let's turn it over to Guy Hagi.
How's it on this Wednesday? Today's weather will look like yesterday's weather, and it's going to look like tomorrow's weather as well, with lots of sunshine, breezy trade winds, and a few overnight and early morning showers for a handful of windward spots. Leeward sides will be shut out from the rain, most likely, although there's a slight chance for a few spillovers because we are expecting some breezy trade winds today. They're not that strong just yet, but as the day progresses, they'll be running to about 15 to 20 miles an hour. And we're talking across the state, basically the same conditions with one exception. Over in the corner side of the Big Island, they've got light winds, and that will lead to some afternoon clouds and a few afternoon showers. Fun-sized surf rolling into northwest and south shores. No significant swells expected anytime soon, but we will get minor pulses for the next several days for south shores. So all you townies, heads up. It's going to be a nice long stretch of really fun waves. And we're in for a nice long stretch of fairly calm weather. But again, with the winds lightening up on Friday, there's going to be a weak front due in Friday night into Saturday with a few more windward and Mauka showers, although we are not expecting a washout. Keep it here on Hawaii News Now. We'll have all your severe weather updates.
Nearly 80 years ago, more than a dozen of Hanako Wakatsuki's family members were forcibly removed from their homes and sent to camps across the mainland as part of the mass incarceration of Japanese Americans after the Pearl Harbor attack. Today, Wakatsuki serves for the federal agency behind those incarcerations so she can make sure her family's story and so many others are preserved. It's a passion she's now taking to her newest role as the first ever superintendent of Central Oahu's Honouliuli National Historic Site, where one of Hawaii's own World War II confinement sites was once home to more than 4,400 people. Here's a preview of a special report we have about this story on our HNN digital platforms.
I've been in this career of preservation and history for about 13 years. And then from there, I jumped over to the feds where I was working with the Park Service and then at the U.S. Navy CB Museum as well. So over the years, did a lot of preservation work with Japanese American confinement sites. So Honouliuli is kind of one of those sites, but it was also a POW site as well. I think it's really important that we preserve these stories with the National Park Service because we're telling America's story, right? So we need to make sure that we tell in a holistic way that encompasses all the other sub-stories within it, because Honouliuli is very different, with the POWs, the Japanese American incarceration as well, but it's also part of the larger World War II story that we tend to talk about, but sometimes we don't always tell about these nuances with the POWs or with the Japanese American incarceration. As a person who had family who was incarcerated at those mainland camps, sometimes it could be rough, wearing this badge, because this is a badge of the agency that incarcerated my family, but it's also then the mission of, I would say, the Park Service to tell these stories. My hope that people get out of visiting Honouliuli once we open up to the public is to actually have a better understanding of what actually occurred during World War II, to understand some of the human casualties that occurred.
Again, you can find that story on our HNN digital platforms. Let's see what else the internet is talking about today. And this is sort of an update to a story we brought you a while ago. Busch Beer is offering $20,000 for a dog to drink beer. Don't worry, it's not real beer. It's the brand's new special dog brew. It's made of bone broth. The company launched this last year, and it wants to expand, so they're looking for an official dog brew taste tester. It's going to be a rough job. I really tried there. That was such a bad attempt. Sorry. If your pup is picked, it will be the CTO, the Chief Tasting Officer. All you have to do is go to Busch Beer's social media page. You can read the rules there, and then you have to sort of follow them to post a picture of your dog with a special hashtag. You'll have to, again, go to Busch Beer's social media to figure that out.
What a gig.
Yeah, nothing for cats, I see.
Jonathan's a cat person. If you're new to this, it's now. Okay, it's payday in Las Vegas if you're one of the more than 4,000 people who work at the Cosmopolitan. So the Las Vegas casino is planning to pay $1 million in cash bonuses if 80% of its workforce gets the COVID vaccine. Now, employees need to get at least the first dose by May 1st. The Cosmo is also offering additional cash bonuses for 60% and 70% positive vaccination rates. Now, anyone who doesn't get the vaccine will be required to get tested weekly. The Nevada Gaming Board won't allow casinos to reopen at 100% unless the majority of employees receive the vaccine. That's a pretty good incentive.
Yeah, and I've been looking up my next Vegas trip, like planning it out. Did you know that Virgin opened in the old Hard Rock location?
No.
They just reopened. And then there's a new Cirque in downtown, which is like the first new downtown hotel
looks
in
beautiful.
forever. The pool looks amazing. It has like a stadium seating effect. So it's super cool. Cannot wait to get back to Sin City. Can you tell?
And the Cirque is right next to the Cal Hawaii people, so definitely check that out too when you're at the Cal.
All right, Olympics time.
Yes, so today marks 100 days until the Tokyo Olympics, a summer games with no shortage of challenges. But the host city is hopeful that athletes are still moving full steam ahead. And as Liz McLaughlin reports, she's in Charlotte, North Carolina, where the Olympic trials are underway.
Mascots, lights, and Olympic rings mark a milestone on the road to Tokyo as the countdown clock hits 100 days to the Summer Games.
It's going to be special to get everyone together to celebrate something in sports and in the world, since we've all been through these rough 15 months or so.
But the global crisis is still ongoing. Japan now facing a resurgence of cases, forcing the Olympic torch relay off public streets in Osaka today. Just the latest course correction in the prolonged journey to the Tokyo Olympics.
To have that same energy for another year, it was really challenging.
For some of the youngest members of Team USA, the delay meant an opportunity.
This extra year has given me time to get stronger, get psyched for the games.
New faces and new sports at this year's games. Skateboarding, surfing, karate, and sport climbing at the Olympics for the first time.
I can't wait for more people to be introduced to climbing as it's on this world stage.
A stage with a mostly virtual audience, with only Japanese fans allowed in person. Another blow to the budget of what's on track to be the most expensive Olympics ever. But organizers and athletes are determined to succeed.
And I'm like, can I do it again? Can I be this good? And can I repeat what I did last Olympics? And I feel like that's what motivates me.
Anxious for Olympic glory as the finish line nears.
A young woman you just saw in that story, Evie Liebfarth, just 17 years old, made Team USA today. It was an incredible moment, and it's a lifelong dream of hers. In fact, she wrote in a kindergarten assignment that she had a goal of going to the Olympics one day. Now, before finishing high school, she's accomplished that. In Charlotte, North Carolina, I'm Liz McLaughlin, NBC News.
All right, and NBC handed us a special medal that Ashley has here, which is really a tribute to her being a gold medal anchor right there.
I'm a winner.
Yep. Well, if you notice really closely on there, this isn't an official medal, but this is just sort of like the memorabilia one they hand out, that it has this logo on it. I'll pull it up, and it is 2020 still. Very cool logo there with the Japanese flag symbol there too. But 2020 still, even though we're in 2021, that's because it is still the 2020 Olympics. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for This Is Now. We'll be back tomorrow.